Thanks for joining us tonight on another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I'm so glad to be your host for another fabulous little half hour where we're going to talk all things motorsports, because at long last, the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season has kicked off. We finally had the Clash at Bowman Gray. It was delayed from Sunday to Monday, and then from Monday to Wednesday due to insane snow across the Southeast, specifically in the Carolinas. But good job to everybody involved in making sure that that track was ready to go on race day when Wednesday rolled around. And sure enough, we got a great way to start the NASCAR Cup Series season. Well, I guess it depends on who you ask, but if you're asking me, I thought it was a fairly fun race, and we'll talk about that later on here in the show. But as always, we're here to talk about the most recent news and notes in the world of motorsports. And before we do that, please remember, if you like this show, feel free to give me a follow on social media. You can do so by looking up at rpeters33 on your favorite social media platforms, and then make sure to have that handy-dandy little WTHR Plus app installed on your smart TV so you can watch brand new episodes of The Racing Report each and every week, and you'll never miss an episode with the WTHR Plus app. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right on in to the first piece of news for today in the world of Formula One, and that is that Jack Doohan has signed with Haas as their reserve driver for 2026. Now, it's been reported that Doohan reportedly did consider Super Formula rides, which we had reported in previous Racing Report episodes, but he has ultimately decided to stay in Formula One by taking this reserve role with Haas F1 team. So, a good deal for Doohan. Obviously, it's disappointing for him given the fact that he only really got 5 races to prove anything with Alpine last season, but he's not being shied away from a Formula One paddock. He'll still be at the races, albeit as a reserve driver for the Haas F1 team. Meanwhile, in Formula One, Mercedes will become the sole supplier of safety cars beginning with this Formula One season after Aston Martin's contract expired at the end of 2025. So you'll only see Mercedes safety cars this season in Formula One when you're watching it on Apple TV, which is our great segue into our next piece of news, because Eddie Q, the senior vice president of services for Apple, says that the company's telecast plans for its first season as the F1 broadcaster in the United States will be revealed later on this month. Now, he also said that there will be more options available for fans to follow the race, basically meaning you'll be able to follow specific teams, you'll be able to look at a bunch of different camera angles, and the quality will also be in 4K, so you'll be able to watch Formula One broadcasts in arguably one of the highest picture qualities that's available right now. Obviously, there's 8K, but let's be honest, how many of you streaming television can get 4K regularly, let alone 8K? But for those of you who have maybe a higher speed internet service like fiber, you'll be able to most likely watch Formula One in 4K on Apple TV. So those are some things very exciting to look forward to, and as soon as Apple does reveal their broadcast plans, we'll be sure to bring you all of that news right here on the Racing Report. But for now, let's go ahead and transition into the world of IndyCar, because there's quite a lot to discuss. Now, we talked about it last week. We discussed it last week. It was rumored last week that the series could be announcing an 18th race around the streets of Washington, D.C. Well, not long after we recorded that episode, that came to fruition. It is now official that IndyCar has indeed added an 18th race to the schedule, with the inaugural Freedom 250, that's what it's going to be called, scheduled in Washington, D.C. for the days of August 21st through the 23rd. Now, President Donald Trump signed the executive order to bring the series to the National Mall on January 30th, and the order, which you can read on racer.com as well as various other places on the internet, I believe the official White House website should also have it, it states that the Secretary of the Interior and the Secretary of Transportation will have 2 weeks to design a circuit around the National Mall. I wonder how accurate that is, or I wonder if maybe a circuit has already been designed 2 weeks seems very, very short notice to design a circuit, let alone a track around the National Mall that doesn't impact traffic or impact the day-to-day goings of the United States federal government. But we'll just have to see what ends up coming behind that. Now, Racer is reporting that the race will be free to the general public. So if you're in Washington, D.C., you're expected to not have to pay anything to go see this race. It's basically going to be almost as if it's a public good provided by the government / IndyCar. Now, the addition to this race also means that IndyCar will have 5 straight races to end the 2026 season, beginning for the second weekend of August at Portland and then going all the way through the first weekend in September where they end at Laguna Seca. So instead of having a break, at least a break between Laguna Seca and Toronto, which is not really Toronto, it's Markham, but I'm getting used to that still. The series is going to go 5 straight weeks. 5 straight weeks to end the season. So that's definitely going to, more likely than not, cause some sort of stress for teams. And again, since this is an 18th race, it was rumored that it's possible that the Milwaukee Mile might go down from a doubleheader to a single header. But no, that second race at Milwaukee is still set to go on as the 17th race of the 2026 IndyCar calendar. So a lot of moving parts to this. And one more thing to talk about is that monumental sports and entertainment owners of the NBA's Washington Wizards, the WNBA's Washington Mystics, and the NHL's Washington Capitals will handle marketing and hospitality for the race. So they will be handling all of that, marketing and making sure that people are happy, all of the promotion, basically. So maybe we could see a fairly successful race down here. Granted, given IndyCar's past with planning races either at the last minute or certain street races in various different locations, naturally I have my doubts. Again, my doubts are not political. Don't think about this for a minute as being political. This is racing. This is specifically coming from someone who's covered IndyCar for the better course of 10 years. And based on what I've seen, there are reasons to potentially doubt this happening. But if you really want to hear any of that, we just published a brand new episode of my podcast, Racing with Rob and Roller, where myself and U.S. Legends Cars social media man Josh Roller, we all discussed that at length, and it's available right now on any of your favorite podcast platforms if you'd like to check that out and really hear my feelings about it. Again, it's not political. It's just simply me listening to this and saying, you said this not long ago, and now this is happening. It's kind of like that. It's not a political thing. It's more what is going on here. How does the process for making a track, creating a schedule, how is that actually going on if this is so easy apparently to throw together? But we won't talk too much about that because we do need to move on into more IndyCar news. And that is Mick Schumacher had his first oval test this week at the Homestead Miami Speedway. Now, it was very interesting to see that he was running that test with the high downforce package, which is common now for pretty much every IndyCar oval race except for the Indianapolis 500. And now, while details of the test are pretty spotty, we don't exactly know how successful it was, what the team was looking for. Schumacher did tell Racer that things started out a bit tricky, but he eventually got comfortable and with the car, and overall felt that it was a good test. So some positive things coming up there for Mick Schumacher. Again, he's got another test here in a couple of weeks, the official series test at Phoenix. That's coming up after their test at the Sebring International Raceway. That should be coming up here in about a week's time. Now, speaking of those upcoming tests, the status of Prema remains a little bit up in the air. Now, again, Racer, thanks for all their reporting because they're killing it, basically dominating most of the reporting here for the IndyCar session. I'm going to give them as much credit as I can. But Doug Bowles told Racer in an article this week that he is rooting for Prema to be on the grid at St. Petersburg. But in the same article, it appears as though Chevrolet and Firestone have been, quote-unquote, patient with Prema as it looks to return to the grid in 2026. Now, we were previously reported that Prema had a January 31st deadline to get that contract sorted out with Chevrolet, but it looks like they've delayed that a little bit in hopes hopes and anticipation that Prema will indeed be on the grid here in now less than a month's time at St. Petersburg. So again, something we're continuing to monitor here with the Prema situation, whether or not they'll be on the grid at St. Petersburg or whether or not they'll maybe even be on the grid when the series goes to Phoenix, the race after St. Petersburg. All that will come hopefully in the next coming weeks, and we'll keep you updated right here on the Racing Report. But the final piece of IndyCar news to discuss this week is very interesting. McLaren CEO Zach Brown said during the team's opening of its new Indianapolis facility that he asks Fernando Alonso almost every time he sees him about the potential of returning to the team to run the Indianapolis 500. Brown appears to want Alonso to run the race at least one more time. So maybe we haven't seen the last of Alonso at the Indianapolis 500. But again, that's all hearsay. Just wanted to talk about it here real quick. But let's go ahead and move on to the final open wheel news segment of the show, because we do have to take a break here in a little bit. But in Formula E news, they did have a race this weekend at around the Miami International Autodrome. Formula E CEO Jeff Dodds said that weekend that he expects that there will be 2 races in the United States next season, and that he's reportedly spoken with, quote, places like Phoenix, Atlanta, COTA, Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, Detroit, and Denver as possible locations. And now he also noted that the series has a nice anchor here on the East Coast with Miami, so they might look something a little bit more out west when it comes to planning for their next and second United States stop in Formula E. Finally, speaking of that Miami layout and Miami race, some Formula E drivers are reportedly calling for a longer Miami track, saying that the current 14-turn, 1.4-mile layout is too short and not very challenging. So, very interesting news there. But hey, we're going to take our first break of the show, but when we come back, we are going to break down all of the news and notes from the world of Supercars as well as the world of NASCAR, because there's a lot to get to as they both have their season opening races coming up here in just a few weeks' time. So, more Racing Report after these commercials, so don't go anywhere. You are watching the Racing Report. And welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thanks so much for sticking with us through that break. It looks like it's time now for us to move on into our touring car / stock car news segment of the show. And we will begin in the world of supercars from down under, because we have some significant number news to discuss. Yeah, not really driver news, not sponsor news really, but number news. Yes, this is very big. If you've been following supercars for a very long time, let's say the last 20 to 30 years, you will understand the significance of what I'm about to share. But first of all, Brody Kostecki will inherit the famous and iconic number 17 during the 2026 campaign following Will Davison's exit from Dick Johnson Racing. Now, the number 17 is synonymous with Dick Johnson Racing. Lots of very famous drivers, including Dick Johnson himself, have piloted that specific number. And Scott McLaughlin is also a very notable driver who has piloted that machine as well. And so that number carries a lot of significance with Dick Johnson Racing. So it's very good to see Brody Kostecki getting to race that car, race that number, and carry all of that history with him, and I'm sure he's excited. But he's not the only driver that's going to inherit a historic number this season. Craig Lowndes, who, as we reported and as you know, has left AAA Racing after a 21-year career with the team to join Team 18 as a wildcard driver and an endurance driver for them. Now, as a result of his departure, he has given Will Brown his blessing to drive the famous number 888, the 888, in AAA Racing beginning in 2026. Now, if you followed Supercars for years during Lowndes' tenure with AAA Racing, he was usually always in the number 888 car. And so it's great to see that he gave Will Brown his best, his blessing, and said, yes, I am leaving this team, but I think this number, you deserve to have it and have a chance to drive it and race with it. So that is some really cool news there out of the world of supercars in Australia. But that's not the only piece of news we should talk about. SCT Racing, which has shifted its entry from Brad Jones Racing to AAA Racing, has now rebranded as Objective Racing. So that's a minor thing, but it will have a very different livery. It's going to have a black livery instead of the traditional all-white livery that you've been accustomed to seeing. And driver Jackson Walls will pilot that entry, and it will be numbered 11 in the 2026 season. So some interesting things coming up as the Supercar season does start in Sydney in just a few weeks' time. But there's a series that's starting its official points-paying season in just a couple weeks, at least by the time you're probably watching this, it'll be about a week time, but that means the world of NASCAR, and we've got a lot of NASCAR news to get to, so we're going to try and get through it as fast as we can, so stay with me here. A lot of NASCAR news coming up. First and foremost, we'll talk about today is that the NASCAR antitrust lawsuit has officially been dismissed with prejudice after the settlement agreement was finalized on Tuesday, meaning we could finally wash our hands from this whole thing and put it behind us. Everybody is putting it behind us, and the NASCAR lawsuit, hopefully we don't have to ever talk about this again. Meanwhile, something we talked about last week and was a major point of reference in our show is that NASCAR has officially announced that the fall race at the Charlotte Motor Speedway will no longer be contested on the Roval, the infield road course, as I said, known as the Roval, and instead all three races that weekend, the Truck Series, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and the Cup Series will race on the oval. So Charlotte Motor Speedway making that official this week. Meanwhile, in the Daytona 500 entry list category, Casey Mears will reappear. If you watch Brock Beard 15 years ago, I salute you for understanding that that reference. But Casey Mears is going to attempt the Daytona 500 again, driving the number 66 Ford Mustang for Garage 66. He'll have sponsorship from SI Yachts and the Gracie Foundation. Meanwhile, hey, big news for Carson Hocevar. Spire Motorsports just signed him to a multi-year contract extension that will keep him with the team at least through the next decade. So that's at least a 4-year contract extension. So good news there for Carson Hocevar and fans of the Michigan native. Definitely he has for sure shown that he at least deserves more time behind the wheel of that number 77, even if he still does maybe get into a few too many incidents on track, but definitely Spire Motorsports keen to keep him along. More news in the world of NASCAR. Denny Hamlin revealed this week that he re-injured his shoulder during the offseason. Now, Hamlin says that's the same shoulder that he had surgically repaired in November of 2023, but apparently he wanted to have surgery to fix it again, but the window for that closed because it would be too long of a recovery prior to the start of the NASCAR season, so instead, he's just going to race through the injury this season, and I wish him the best. I hope him well. I hope that nothing happens to maybe re-aggravate that injury, because that's not exactly a good thing to deal with. But if he thinks he can race the whole season with that injured shoulder, I tend to trust him. I'm hoping for the best there for Denny. Meanwhile, in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, AM Racing says it's going to return, actually. Remember, just a couple of months ago, we talked about AM Racing being basically bought out by Sigma Performance Systems, and it's going to be called Sigma Autosport or Sigma Racing, and apparently that transaction never got finalized. So AM Racing is actually going to contest the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series in 2026, and Sigma Performance, they're just going to keep focusing on their ARCA cars, and they're also going to continue to provide as much technical assistance as they can with AM Racing until that deal gets finalized, whenever the heck that ends up happening. In the Truck Series, some big news here to talk about today. Cletus McFarland is going to join Nice Motorsports to drive the number 4 Chevrolet in the Truck Series race at Daytona, which means Cletus McFarland is going to be teammates with Travis Pastrana in the Truck Series race. That is also going to include Tony Stewart driving a Dodge Ram. If that hasn't gotten you excited to watch the truck race at Daytona, I don't know what is. So some big news there in the world of the NASCAR Truck Series, but it doesn't end there, because we got a huge news bomb that honestly I never saw coming, but I am welcome and thrilled to hear it, because Dario Franchitti, yes, that same Dario Franchitti, 3-time Indianapolis 500 winner, multi-time IndyCar champion, he's coming back to the Truck Series. He made one start at Martinsville in the fall of 2007, and now he's back. And he's going to drive at St. Petersburg with Tricon Garage in their number 1 Toyota Tundra. Now, what's important to note is that Franchitti does indeed have an IndyCar race victory at St. Petersburg. He won the race in 2011, and this is a huge deal because, again, Franchitti had that horrifying career-ending crash at Houston back in 2013, and we all thought this was it. That was the last time we ever saw Dario Franchitti race at all professionally. But no, apparently we just had to wait 13 years, and here he is. He's back in the Truck Series race, and I'm all for that. Awesome news there for Dario. I am thrilled. But hey, we've got to take our final break of the show, and when we come back, we are going to discuss everything that happened in the Clash, everything that happened in the Formula E race, and we're also going to talk about the races that are coming up because there's a lot of them and you're going to want to stay tuned for all of that. So, more Racing Report coming up right after these messages. You are watching WTHR Plus. And welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thanks so much for sticking with us through that break. Let's go ahead and get into it. The NASCAR Clash was back. Again, it took us a long time to get to it. It felt like we were never going to see it. I honestly was like, man, is this going to happen? Is it going to happen at all? All that snow that moved through North Carolina and South Carolina, man, that was a lot of snow if you haven't seen it. In fact, I believe last weekend it caused an 100-car pileup on a highway. And according to my podcast co-host, Josh Roller, we do a podcast called the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast, which is available on all your major podcast platforms. He says that was actually not far from his house. So, very interesting news there in the terms of weather. But outside of the interesting weather that we're seeing, we had a great race at the Clash, even though it was run in freezing temperatures and in the sleet and rain. They put, halfway through, NASCAR said, you know what, we're going to put on the wet weather tires and we're going to go at it. And these guys were slip-sliding around all over the place. Everybody was crashing into each other. But we did see a lot, I think, more competitive racing on a short track, which I think the idea of NASCAR upping the horsepower to 750 is exactly what they were trying to get. And I'm glad that they did that. I'm glad that that ended up helping out a little bit. Granted, I think if the race was dry, I think you might have seen a little bit more. Obviously, the last chance qualifier was run in the dry, and you had a great, thrilling battle there between Austin Cindric and Corey LaJoie, and then AJ Allmendinger got involved in it, and it was a really good, fun battle. So even though maybe the Clash wasn't as non-controversial, I guess, as maybe some NASCAR races are hoped to be, I thought it showed good progress for what this new car and this new package is going to show on the short track. So I'm very excited for when we get to places like Martinsville and Bristol here coming up in a couple of months to really see what that horsepower increase does when it comes to those other short tracks. So a lot of good things to talk about. But of course, the best thing is that Ryan Preece won the race. Now he becomes just the third driver, to win a NASCAR Cup Series race before winning a points-paying race. So he's got the Clash at Daytona now, the Clash at Bowman Gray. Now he's just got to go out there and win an actual Cup Series points race, and then he'll have done it all, basically. But no better person, I think, to win at Bowman Gray than someone who got their start in the modifieds. Gotta love that for Ryan Preece. Definitely somebody who's clawed his way to where he is today, and then to just celebrate like that, gotta be happy for him. But that wasn't the only race that happened this week. There was also a Formula E race that also featured some rain down in Miami. The Formula E drivers were racing in the Miami International Autodrome, had an early race crash that brought out the safety car, extended the race as well. But at the end of it, it was Mitch Evans winning that race for Jaguar. And that victory actually was Evans' 15th career Formula E victory. Now that actually eclipses Sebastian Buemi, who has won 14 races. So Mitch Evans is now the winningest all-time driver in Formula E history with those 15 career wins. And Formula E is not going away anywhere anytime soon, because as we now move on into the races coming up, let's talk about some of these things. So here's the Daytona 500 schedule, because we're coming up on that. The Daytona 500 practice is going to begin February 11th, followed by qualifying later that evening. Then the dual races are set for Thursday, February 12th, beginning at 7 o'clock p.m. in the Eastern time. All these times are Eastern. The truck race is going to begin February 13th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. The ARCA race is going to go green noon, February 14th. And speaking of the ARCA race, our interview with Preece Sora is still available right now to watch on WTHR Plus. So after you're done checking this episode out, make sure to check out our interview with Preece Sora if you haven't already, because he's going to be down there in Daytona attempting to qualify for that race. We wish him luck. But after that ARCA race, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race begins later that afternoon at 5 o'clock p.m. in the Eastern Time, before the Daytona 500 begins February 15th at 2:30 p.m. But that's not all, because Formula E has a doubleheader in Jeddah set for February 13th and 14th, and both of those races will start at around noon Eastern Time, so there's more racing there. But you thought that was it. No. There's so much more racing this weekend, because the Bathurst 12-hour, yes, the 12 hours of Bathurst is also scheduled for February 14th, at least over here in the United States. Now, that race will begin at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time here in the States, and that race will be streamed, actually, for free on their YouTube channel. And finally, like I said, Supercars is coming back February 20th through the 22nd with the Sydney 500, so definitely a lot of things to look forward to coming up in the near future. But that is it for this week's episode of The Racing Report. Thank you again so much to everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate all of your support. And again, if you like the show, feel free to give me a follow on social media. You can do so looking up at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS 33. And then make sure, as always, you have that WTHR Plus app installed on your smart TV so you can watch brand new episodes of The Racing Report each and every week that they are released. So for WTHR Plus, my name is Rob Peeters, and this has been another episode of The Racing Report. We will see you next week to preview the Daytona 500.